Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Good evening, everyone. You're listening to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm your co-host, Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We have a great show ahead of you today. We've got our F1 race, or lack thereof, in Belgium. We've got the LCS semifinals and championship. We've got some Mental Misplay Commander games that Justin got to participate in. So we have a lot ahead of you. Justin, how's your week been?
My week has been pretty good. I have an interesting rose, thorn, and seed here for you. So this weekend, I was at a country concert with my mom. It was the Country Spirit USA in Glenmore, Pennsylvania. We saw Miranda Lambert, Brantley Gilbert, a couple other names and faces, which will, stay tuned. I'm going to talk about one of the artists in the flavor of the week later. But, so yeah, that was my rose, was the country concert with my mom. That was a good time. Really kind of set up the week really well. Had two long days on Friday and Saturday. They were two record-breaking step days for me, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, so that was my rose, country concert over the weekend. My thorn is a little bit closer to today. Me and a couple of friends got into a building crafting forging type game. It's called Satisfactory. It's been out for a decent while. We found it on Steam, but it's the kind of game that I casually looked over my shoulder, and it was just 5 a.m. one morning, and you weren't sure where it all went. So a lot of good time spent with the buddies playing some games. But yeah, my thorn is I have it written 5 a.m. recklessness, just playing video games until 5 a.m. That was not a good choice, but it was we had fun doing it.
It's been a while since one of those nights, right?
Exactly, which is why it put me off kilter so much. So yeah, that was kind of funny. And then my seed. And I don't know, you may find this interesting here, good sir. Now, do you remember a couple months back, maybe a couple weeks back, we would have been talking about, one of my seeds was that the lack of music has, I think, increased my agitation and frustration levels. So I was going to do some work, explore that, and, try and inject some music back into my life.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so That is a seed that has grown. I'm coming back with a flowered tree here for you, where I have found myself more even keeled. I haven't been as agitated. I haven't been as frustrated. And now maybe it's a combination of things, but one of the big things that has changed was intentionally listening to more music when I'm home, instead of just putting on a show or putting on this, and spending time with the artist, spending time with the material. The country concert really helped with my mom. Hopefully we get to talk about it later. Donda from Kanye West, that really helps. So yeah, just injecting music back into my life has, as I thought it might, helped with some of my mood instability. So I figured you may be happy to hear that one there, Aaron.
Oh, absolutely. I think I love the progress, taking something and that you want to do and actually taking the steps forward with it. I've realized in a lot of things, I guess for me, it's so easy to know that you want to change something and know kind of what you want to do, but actually enacting that and kind of taking that step is not always easy. So I definitely think that's awesome.
It's a tough step to make sometimes, just getting started. I'll tell you though, the one thing, and both Joe Rogan and Mark Norman have said this about their comedy process, where they get it into their heads that the goal is just sit for 5 minutes. Just sit here for 5 minutes and think about a joke. And that's what Joe would say. And then Mark would say, like, oh, I want to read more and I'm trying to read more books. So the one thing he said was, I tell myself, just read 5 pages. All I want to do is read 5 pages. And he's like, and 10 pages in, I'm here, I've got a coffee, my leg's up, and then you read 50. So I think the tidbit is like, find a way to make the starting of the behavior like a nice bite-sized piece, and then just let momentum take you through, because you want to be doing it anyway. It's just starting is the hardest part, right?
100%. Small but like achievable goals that kind of build into, it's like the same idea as long-term goals, where you're like, okay, this is where I want to be in a year, but to get there I have to like kind of hit this checkpoint and this checkpoint and this checkpoint along the way. So like, you're really only aiming for that first one initially, and then you're like, okay, I got there, and just build on it. So
yeah, exactly. So it's just stuff like that. But yeah, man, that's been my week. Give me your Rose Thorn Seed. What do you got?
So my Rose, honestly, I had a pretty good week. Today was the only kind of rougher day. Work was a little, I don't know. I was just feeling really anxious, and I couldn't figure out. I still haven't figured out why I was feeling anxious, because it wasn't a stressful day at work. I wasn't like, I got a lot of things done, but like early on, I could tell that I have like noticed there are certain reactions that I have within myself when I am anxious, and one of them is that like cluttered noise really bothers me. So like for instance, in the office, there was a point where there's like two maintenance guys coming in. One's like talking to me about something, one's talking to the maintenance coordinator that I was training about something else. Then there's the property manager talking to someone else, and there's like 3 or 4 conversations going on all at one time.
Gotcha.
Normally I can just tune it out and do what I'm doing and like deal with what's right in front of me. And when I'm anxious, it really just bothers me. I start to physically like feel uncomfortable. My shoulders get tight, like all these like things where I'm just like, I hate this, and I just want to like run away to a quiet like area. And it's really, really like weird. So today was literally the only day that I had anything like that. I almost got hit on the way home too, but that's fine. I didn't, because I'm a good driver, unlike the person that I almost had an accident with. So they ran a red light like 5 seconds after it turned red. Turning into, like, I'm on a highway. I see the light turn green in front of me. I'm already going 35, 40 miles an hour. I just stay going that speed. Next thing I know, like, this car just comes from the red light and turns into my lane in front of me. So I slam on the brakes, screech my wheel, slam on the horn for longer than I have in quite a while, and made them feel like a real shithead for almost killing us. But
brother.
Yeah. So like it sounds like it's not my Rose, but honestly, I had a really good week other than like some stressfulness today. So I'll take it. I've had a good attitude. I'm like still putting a positive spin on things with tougher days and all. So even though today was rough, I'm good. So
wow. I'm happy that you're still here and alive, and I'm sure all of our listeners are happy that you're still alive as well. That's good to hear. Holy shit.
Yeah, it was not super exciting, but yeah, I think building, kind of like you were saying, I built on keeping that positive attitude about things and like changing my perspective on stuff for the past couple weeks, and I've been able to keep that going and all.
Nice.
Through that. My thorn is the rain and kind of flooding that we had in the area. It actually, fortunately, did not affect my work, but the entire like riverside part of Manayunk and Philadelphia altogether is like insanely flooded right now. So, like, one of our apartment buildings down, like 20 minutes away from here, the entire first floor of the building is underwater, or was underwater earlier. They're like right on the river. So like,
Dude, that's so crazy.
like a bunch of restaurants downtown here are flooded out. Like, also, it's just a problem. So
Damn, man. Well, oh fuck. If anyone's in the Philadelphia area right now dealing with it, my goddamn hearts go out to you. That's shitty.
yeah, like I saw so many videos of cars underwater. We had 5 tornadoes that touched down in like our area in New Jersey last night. It was
What?
Yeah, there were 5 different tornadoes. Like,
Damn.
yeah, it was weird. So fuck this weather, fuck global warming.
Yeah.
That's my thorn right now. Even though it hasn't like super negatively affected me, it sucks.
Yeah, and it makes the days tough. It makes moving around tough, and then you hear about your neighbor and community members like being underwater, and that's just like a terrible feeling. So yeah, rain is a big thorn. I'm with you, man. What's your seed?
My seed is that I actually did similar to you, something I've talked about for a bit now, and I started doing some legitimate job searching. Not necessarily that I am immediately gonna jump on the first thing I find, but I wanted to get an idea of like what is out there and what might pique my curiosity, what might fit with my qualifications and things like that. So I kind of took a jump in, was looking on a couple of different sites at job postings and things like that, just to get a good idea of what is out there, and I don't know, keep my eyes open, I guess, on things like that. So,
Well, on that note, sir, do not forget all of the new and different skills that you could put on a resume for like the things that you've learned and continue to do, like here for the work that you do on the podcast. Like think about that. You are head of production of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I mean, think about it. That's not a title on a business card, but that is what you are. That's what you do. Right? You now have like audio and video, like actual technical skills, not just the idea of like, yeah, if I wanted to figure out how to do it, I could. That's very different than being able to put on your resume like, I've produced, mixed, and uploaded audio and video products to the public. That's fair. That's a whole sentence on a resume, my friend. Yeah. Right? Like, so I just say that to say when you're thinking of things that are piquing your curiosity and thinking of qualifications and am I right for this and that position, think outside the box when trying to like assess your skills and maybe what you're capable of. 'Cause yeah, like there are a myriad of different things that you're responsible for now than you were a year ago, but even when you were in the hospitality business, right?
True.
So just know that you the singular you are always learning, and never be afraid to sell that shit. Be like, I can do this for you.
I appreciate that. That's definitely something I will keep in mind. I've tweaked my resume to at least get it up to date with like all of my jobs and things like that. So it's definitely something I can probably tweak a little more, look it over, see if I've have any of that stuff on there. So yeah, definitely worthwhile. I hadn't even thought about that, like outside of work things that I could do. I always relate resumes to work experience as opposed to... I
mean, but even though what we're doing, like, it's not your job, it is work that you've done, right? It's a product, it's a project, right? It's work done, man.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I haven't thought about it like that way.
And that is a year of production.
That's true.
I mean,
yeah. You're not wrong.
So yeah, it's not just what you get paid for. There are skills that you learn in your hobbies and your trade craft that can like truly translate and could be the difference. So just to you and anybody listening thinking about changing their position, just think hard on what kind of skills you got.
Oh, that's a great point. I definitely will keep that in mind going forward when I'm looking and all. I might find something that might interest me that I didn't even think of before now that I'm looking at that. So
Exactly. So yeah, man, I love to hear it. I'm glad to hear that you're hunting and looking for something new, man. I'm glad to hear it. Now there are some other individuals that are hunting and looking for something new. I'm not sure he's ready to put a pin on it, but he's definitely off to different things. Kimi Räikkönen, the Alfa Romeo long-time Formula One driver, has announced his retirement. What do you think about that, my friend?
Sad. I love Kimmy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely okay with it in terms of he's had a fantastic career. He's been a Formula One champion. He is kind of beloved by all. But I think this year his performance slipped a little bit from where it was like last year, even through the pandemic and all. He still looked more competitive than he has this year in his racing and all. Not that he's looked bad. He's still put out pretty decent race performances, but I think it's good that he's decided to move on to new things for him and see where life goes. Plus, it does something that I think Formula One always needs. It opens up a seat for a potential younger driver coming in or a new driver to see what kind of shakeups there could be. Opens a seat up for Valtteri Bottas. I mean, all the different things.
Yeah, this is a true statement. It is an open seat now that Valtteri could slide into. Ahead of this week's race, the Grand Prix in can't think of the town name off the top of my head, but it is the Zandvoort.
Oh yes. Oh! This coming week's race. I was thinking of Spa. So yes, Zandvoort coming up.
Yeah, it's so. Interesting little line of thought here when I was doing my prep. I was like, I'm not familiar with this racetrack. I'm not so sure I know, too much about it. And I went to the Google, and no wonder it's not familiar because we haven't been there since 1985 was, I believe, the last Grand Prix that they held in Formula One. Now, there's other series that race there, but I think the last time F1 was there was 1985.
It was, yeah. So 1985, it was supposed to actually come back onto the schedule last year, but with COVID, it ended up being postponed. So this is the first time in 36 years that it's going to be on the circuit or the schedule
calendar.
So with that, none of the drivers on the grid have ever competitively driven on this track for F1. I couldn't say for other series. I don't know if there's other series that drive on this, but
listening to the driver press conference earlier today, a bunch of the drivers do have experience on the track.
I had a feeling that there would be something out there that
I think it was F3 and DTM that were the two that they mentioned the most. So exciting stuff for. Excuse me, I had a little bit of a little water there. Exciting stuff for F1 as a whole, just getting an older track refreshed for this year's new calendar. What am I talking about refreshments? Banking. Rivaling Indianapolis. We've got 13-degree banks, I believe, on turn 3, and then one deeper in the track, another bank turn.
I was like, what does money have to do with with this F1 race?
Fuck, that's funny. Well, I mean, if you've been paying attention to our podcast, Aaron, banking has everything to do with Formula One.
And with that, we would like to cut to our first ad break, brought to you by Crypt. No, just
and every 30 seconds after, just an ad break. Diamond Credit Union would like to bring you.
And with Chase Bank, you can.
Have you heard of new debit options from? No, this podcast is not sponsored by any of these banks. But yeah, I just thought that was super cool that the track that we're going to be at this weekend has some banking. I'm really excited to get into FP1 and 2, just to see like what that means for the F1 cars, and just like I'm excited to be at a new circuit. I think it's super fun.
Yeah, it's got a really unique design too, it looks like. I mean, you do have a couple of very long straights, but lots of like very sharp 180-degree kind of turns and everything where you're completely switching direction. So there's going to be, I'm hoping honestly, some really good passing opportunities. The areas with the banked turns, I think, will definitely be areas to watch, because I'm not sure how exactly that will play into whether or not you can pass well on those, or if it, like, obviously you'll be able to keep speed better through those turns, but I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see kind of how that works on the circuit in an F1 environment. Obviously, there are bank turns on things like IndyCar, like you said, but those are still more oval track racing typically. So right. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like a big shift up from some of the other tracks that we're used to. That is looking ahead, of course, to this upcoming weekend. We did have Spa. This past weekend, which I know you alluded to, and I kind of missed the pass. Talking about the non-race. Talk to me a little bit about that. Now, before we go any further, YouTube, tall and short of it, race companion for the Spa Grand Prix. Go check it out. We're not going to dive totally into the race. I just kind of want to get some of Aaron's thoughts. Race companion, tall and short of a YouTube channel. Go watch it right now before we talk about this. And Aaron, give me your thoughts about last weekend's race.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because we had a wet, both qualifying as well as race, which is always something that like makes things interesting. You never really know what to expect with the water on the track. It could cause some different incidents that end up with people in positions that they shouldn't be, positions that allow people to take advantage that normally couldn't on the dry weather with a normal racetrack conditions, like Esteban Ocon winning his first race, the last race before Belgium. So there are things that can happen that will shake things up. We had Sergio Perez signing for another year with Red Bull, so I was amped about that announcement and all, because I've really been impressed with him this year, and I was like, great, first race, like signed to the new contract and everything, coming out of the mid-season. And McLaren has two tweets that just sum it up just about perfectly. Their first one is it's wet, and the second one is it's wet again. And that is kind of how the weekend went. So qualifying, just in general, that was kind of the most exciting part of like the weekend.
Right.
So we had some really interesting shakeups with everything. I mean, we ended up with Max P1 just barely beating out George Russell in a Williams, which is a statement that I didn't think I'd ever say.
Yeah, and to the degree that Saturday, it was wet enough on Sunday that Saturday was pretty much the only day that mattered, and it really came up huge for George Russell nailing that P2. I've heard a lot of chatter. Some individuals are calling it one of the best F1 laps ever, which makes sense to me, being that newer driver, bottom of the table car, wet day. I think there are a lot of check marks that go to the affirmative for that. I haven't seen every F1 lap, so I couldn't tell you. But yeah, it was pretty great by my eye, and like truly congratulations to George for sticking it on P2 in that qualifying lap. Now, I know for the race they just did 2 laps for classification, which nailed George his first podium in Formula One, and it was a P2 nonetheless off of a great qualifying, which tells us, I know we've had the conversation before, but qualifying really matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to affect the race in general, but you never know what could potentially happen in those scenarios, and this was the kind of weirdest scenario. For any of you all who watched, or I mean just anyone, like what happened on Sunday with us was we were sitting here, hit record at 9 a.m., started talking about what was going to happen in the race. They were doing formation laps, and then they pulled everyone off track, red flagged the race because of the rain. Mm-hmm. So we sat here for like 3 hours through.
Well, Perez put it into the wall on his formation lap, so that kind of spurred the conversation.
That wasn't even the formation lap. That was the going to the grid ahead.
Yes, the out lap. Yes.
Yeah, so they're leaving the pit lane to go to the grid and everything. Yeah, Checo binned it because of the water and rain.
And it was more of a conversation of visibility, not necessarily water on track. Correct.
By race start time, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when they did the formation lap at the start, there was so much spray. The guys were instantly on the team radio saying that there was no visibility. It was extremely dangerous. Just the spray of the water was really bad. And you could see it very visibly. There were also periods of time where like they would show video footage showing down the track, and you'd be like, where is the track? It was just gray and like foggy and cloudy almost looking all over the track. It was definitely not conditions to race safely, which also upset a lot of the drivers. The fact that they did the 2 laps for the qualification to be able to say, hey, race is complete, on to the next one, without looking to reschedule or whatnot. I understand, or reschedule or cancel, I guess, which I understand is not a decision that they want to take lightly. There's a lot that goes involved with like postponing a race. Lots of people on Twitter I saw were like, race tomorrow, and it's like, well, all the like officials and people around the track that are working there like have day jobs. Like they're not just like, some of them, yes, are full-time F1 employees. Others are like, hey, like, yeah, I'm helping out at the track on my weekend because that's awesome, and I get to see F1 up close, and I'm also like knowledgeable about whatever thing they need them there for. And those people have normal day jobs. They were going back to work on Monday. Like, there's no way to conveniently do that and reschedule.
Can't get a babysitter on Monday. They're out. Like, the world of F1 is set up for the weekend. It's not. It doesn't seem like a thing that's ever really bled into the week.
I mean, it's a traveling circus, just to genuinely put it that way. It's like that's what it is. You see these people come in, set up tents and trailers, get things going for a weekend, and the next weekend that track could have literally nothing going on potentially, depending on like.
Or it could just have 7-year-olds in the carts, like on the karting track.
Yeah. So there's like so
exactly.
much that you like. It just doesn't work to have like full-time crew that's just like going everywhere. So yeah, no postponement for the race. They got the classification, but
right. As much as individuals would like to believe, the world doesn't revolve around F1. You know.
I know. But your world should revolve around this F1 podcast because it's the best one out there.
I would agree. And it's funny that we just mentioned the Formula One podcast part of it and not everything else that we cover. It's funny that we only reference like the front half of our podcast and everything after is just, well, we don't mention that. He's not allowed out of the basement. Close the door when family's here. We don't talk about it. That's
exactly
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny to me. I like that. that you're embarrassed about the second half of our podcast.
Oh, I'm definitely not.
Dude, what even are we if we can't be a full podcast? Seriously, what even are we, Aaron?
We're the best at everything we do. That's what
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So yeah, interesting set of circumstances for this past Sunday. Great qualifying from George Russell. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton was P3, but nobody gives a shit. Other than that, man,
best British driver on the track was George Russell. So just saying.
Just saying, yeah. And then Lewis Hamilton best of the rest.
Yep. And so the weird thing, I guess, or like semi-weird thing that we have now. Is the fact that if there are more than 2 laps complete in a race and less than 75% of the race is completed, even though those 2 laps were under safety car, we end up with a half points qualification. So Max's win netted him 12.5 points. George's P2 netted him 9. Lewis P3, 7.5. All the way down to Carlos Sainz, who got half a point.
They're giving half points.
They are giving half points. I looked into it and determined that is actually a thing.
Okay. Fair enough.
With that being said, we end up with Nick Latifi getting another point in his Williams as well. So we've got George up in 15th and Nick Latifi in 16th ahead of both the Alfa Romeos and both Haas cars. So Williams rocketing up the charts.
Yeah, big weekend for Williams. That's actually kind of dope. It's amazing how fast things can shift. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so Lewis is ahead of Max by 3 points. Front with Lewis at 202.5 to Max's 199.5.
So weird. So weird.
Very weird. And Carlos Sainz got a big lead on his teammate, going from being up 83 points to 82 to up to 83.5 points to 82 on Leclerc.
Wow.
So,
wow. Okay, that's a big spread there.
Leaps and bounds with these half point totals.
Yeah. Jeez, oh man. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, and now 3 different teams also have half point totals in the constructors as well.
Yeah, and I know we made jokes about the half points on the race companion, and we were talking about they'll round up or down. I doubt about half points.
I didn't think they would. I didn't see why they would necessarily.
Yeah. Put a foot in our mouths, man. That's super funny.
Yeah. So hey, I'll take it. It's interesting, but
yeah, and to your point about the next time this happens, to your point on that, this was a precedent-setting race in Formula One because a decision like that hadn't been made recently.
Yeah, there had not really been any scenarios recently that they had decided, hey, let's just boom, run through and just get the race on the books and on to the next one. So whether that was drivers pushing for it, I think a big part of it though was also the fact that it was Spa and just the dangerousness of the circuit itself, and so that coupled with the rain and all, just really deterred people from even attempting to want to run like a full race, or drivers being like, it's fine. Other than Max on his one lap at the formation, it was like, it's all good because I don't have cars in front of me that
of course you could see, brother, but nobody behind you could.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I get it too. Like, how's he's supposed to know what kind of visibility is behind him? But also, man, he was like, I'm in the lead. I've got clear track ahead of me. Like, I'm good.
It's in his best interest to race.
It is. So I don't blame him for, like, I don't think he was being reckless or anything by saying that. I think the stewards made the right decision based on safety of all drivers, but I completely get where he was coming from with it. It's like,
for sure.
I'm good, and hey, helps me out.
Yeah, speaking of I'm good, helps me out, I'm not worried about them, I would just like to give a shout out to any of the Formula One fans that were there at Spa in the rain with your rain jackets on, your umbrellas out, and your ponchos and shit, because the views of those hills and the bleacher seats and all that, it looked absolutely miserable. And me and Aaron from our comfortable couches on a warm Sunday, we're like, oh man, that's a tough one out there. But you guys are the ones.
The hill over there looks pretty muddy. Be careful walking down it.
Exactly. So you guys are the ones that really stuck it out. You guys are the ones that, like, it must have been a day for you guys, not just, the drivers. They had it kind of easy. They got to sit on the grid. But yeah, it was the fans and the bleachers and the hills that kind of made all the difference. And, they sat there and spent the time. Because it was a long Sunday morning. It really was, like, waiting to see, is the race going to get going? It was literally every 5 minutes, like, all right, we'll update on the weather, we'll update on the weather, we'll update on the weather. So yeah, long slog of a Sunday. Glad we got the classification. And just one more time, shout out to the Formula One fans that were out on those hills, because, like McLaren said, it was wet.
Yeah, it really just a rough weekend. And also, just, I think this officially solidifies George Russell as all-time Mr. Saturday. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
They call him Mr. Saturday for getting his, like, Williams almost into Q3 or just into Q3 in races. Man put it on P2. I, like, almost had pole position. Just
imagine what was it, like a 10th or like 100th or whatever?
It was 3/10 at the end of the day, but but still, like, he just unreal.
Agreed.
3/10 up on Max, 3.5 up on Lewis. Just incredible. Or sorry, my mistake. Max was 3/10 up on George. George was a couple tenths up on Lewis.
Gotcha, okay.
So, but that kind of takes us to the end of that race breakdown at the end. There really wasn't a ton, unfortunately, to really talk about. So, we had a wet, long morning, which is fine. It is what it is. So.
Yeah, definitely. Just last notes about F1. This weekend, no race companion. We've got some other stuff going on this weekend. But look ahead to the next races coming up. We'll likely be doing a race companion for one of those, just not for one this weekend. We've got the Dutch Grand Prix at the new Zandvoort circuit. Looking ahead to it. Let us move on to the steak and potatoes here, my friend. We had a couple series. One was better than the other. Who do you like? What do you like? What happened?
Well, I mean, first off, we had the Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves series. So, started off with, honestly, I was just extremely impressed with 100 Thieves' performance throughout. Cloud9, I think, put on a decent fight. Game 2, like, I think Cloud9 had advantages that they didn't use properly. Could have won that game. But honestly, like, the rest of the series, so like games 1 and 4, which 100 Thieves won, were not really that close in my opinion. So,
And just to continue that point, and then continue that trend continued then in the other series, 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid. Like it was even more of a romp. So yeah, 100 Thieves just in good form this weekend. Sorry to cut you off, Aaron. Go ahead.
no, not at all. Like honestly, I was just insanely impressed by 100 Thieves throughout. Like they kind of knew that I think if they performed well against Cloud9, they had a good shot at the shot in the finals against Team Liquid. And they came out with some really, really solid picks. Closer, like, was just unbelievable. He, in my opinion, deserves like the MVP of the playoffs, probably the season as well. Just in general, like the dude is so good and looked really, really solid. The Lee Sin, like he's just a threat on a number of champions. He's got the Lee Sin, he's got the Viego, looks good on the Xin Zhao, and there's just really not a lot of downside to the way he's playing right now.
Now, this was something me and you were talking about on Sunday. I don't remember if it was on or off camera, but me and Aaron were talking about the worlds, the worlds where we had Samsung Blue and Samsung White, and it was Samsung Blue that continually got the better of White in the regular season. I believe it was 3 best of 5s that Blue won, and then White was able to come and win it in the semifinals against Blue, in that World's Championship. Now, what I find fascinating about this NaLCS playoffs, to piggyback on that, is 100 Thieves just lost a best of 5 to Team Liquid earlier in this playoffs. I find that fascinating, where they can go the ringer with the team, get back into the game where they get to play them again, and then they fucking 3-0 them. They didn't go 10 rounds. They went 8 rounds, and the second half was a beater. Like, yeah. I respect 100 Thieves so much for that, where they lose to them, Team Liquid progresses, they go down the losers bracket, get back up, and then body the fight. That to me is just mind-boggling. I don't know how as a team you have the mental fortitude to do something like that, but, and here's the clinker, that gives me great confidence for 100 Thieves going into Worlds, where as a squad, they're not folding, they're not breaking. They're like, it doesn't appear as though they are playing with emotion in a way that they're like up and down like this, right? They're playing with like knowledge, skill, and tactics, and man, does that bode well for the world stage. I'm not saying anything. All I'm saying is I'm excited for them at the world stage because of what they've done in this playoffs.
Well, yeah, and I think that takes it back to kind of later on in the regular season. I am fairly certain I said something to the effect of Cloud9 is looking a little concerning right now, but 100 Thieves looks like our strongest bet for the World Championships based on how they're playing against top teams. But also, just in general, like I'm pretty excited for all the NA teams at Worlds. I really think that I don't know. I'm just so used to years where there's like one team that goes that you're just kind of like, are they going to do anything? They look like they're probably going to get stomped. Like, why are we sending them? All 3 of these teams, not only have they been playing well, but I think they do have like world caliber kind of players on the teams in a lot of the roles. I mean, the only weakness I see for 100 Thieves at Worlds is just their bot lane potentially, and it's mostly because FBI is younger and Huhi sometimes can play a little bit loose and get caught out. And I think that could get taken advantage of, but they're not a weak bot lane in the slightest either. So like they are poised to look really good at Worlds. But yeah, just excited overall to have each of those teams there going on.
Yeah, for sure. So big weekend for 100 Thieves is basically the summation of that. Now we kind of hopped on their bandwagon a little bit here. I did. Let's go into the series a little bit. There was some serious strength from Cloud9, but talk to me about there was some strength from 100 Thieves, but talk to me about what Cloud9 did in the series that impressed you. Were there any picks that you really liked, or just strategies that came out?
I did like that Cloud9 was like really utilizing some of those other like support picks. I mean, they had the Nautilus, they had the what's his name with the chimes, my man Bard. Yes, we had some Bard. We had I think just the flexibility of everything was really solid for Cloud9 throughout the series. A number of different picks for Sven and Vulcan in particular, and they looked really solid throughout. I think the main thing was just unfortunately giving up some early game leads and fights, and then kind of losing out later on because of lack of vision control. But I thought that they played pretty well throughout that series. They just 100 Thieves played like better. I didn't dislike C9's team comps at all.
Right.
So I really don't have anything really negative, but Closer played like a monster. His Lee Sin was unreal throughout the series. He played it in, I think, 3 of the 4 games, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
I'm just glancing through, but...
Blabber got to play it in game 3.
And 4, Blabber played it as well. So, yeah. So, played it 2 out of the 4 games, not 3 out of 4. But overall, I was, just impressed with Cloud9's play. They just seemed to be a little bit off on some of the team fights and all that led to 100 Thieves getting bigger advantages and kind of just pulling the series out. So,
yeah, and it was interesting. Just as like a meta commentary on the playoffs, it's interesting just how important Rise has been, and obviously like Twisted Fate's like still right there in the meta. He can be played. We saw him this weekend. So I think it's fascinating and very, very Worlds for those mobile global ult champions coming back to the meta. It makes me think of the trailer for Fallout 3. Do you remember where it was like the war never changes? Makes me think Worlds never changes. We're going to get the Rumble in the top lane. We're going to get Lee Sin in the jungle, Rise in the mid lane. I think there's a lot of strength in these mid lane picks that can get players roaming around the map and creating big plays. And obviously one of the big highlights from the weekend, like I said, was the Rise and the Twisted Fate. Obviously, interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure Perks was able to get his victory on the Orianna, not necessarily one of the roamers, but for the teams that were winning, Rise and TF are huge. And if you're following League of Legends, if you're following the podcast, you've heard us say those names a million times before. So it's clear that these teams and players know what they like to use, and they want versatility, mobility, and the way to impact other lanes in like a super meaningful way. So I love seeing that that focus on just movement on the map from these teams. I think Cloud9 did it well. I think 100 Thieves did it well. And it bodes well, like we were alluding to at the beginning of the conversation, it bodes well for Worlds that they know how to play these picks and can use them powerfully.
Yeah,
right?
and I definitely think so because it is that meta, and I mean I'm sure we will see more of that going forward into Worlds and everything, play in groups and all. The other thing that really stood out to me, which I'm kind of excited about, is that the top lane was a carry role throughout both of these series. They weren't picking tanks to sit there and farm. I think they are realizing more and more how important the early game is, and having someone who has a strong early game can put out damage and all, whereas some of these tanks are like, nah, I just gotta sit and farm, wait till I get my items, and then I can like be an engaged tool. There's none of that going on right now. I mean, we saw the Ornn in one game of the Cloud9 Thieves series. We saw the Gnar come in as well, I believe, in one of the games. But the matchups are like Gangplank Ornn, Renekton Viego, Renekton Gnar, Viego like Camille. Gangplank Camille. Like, you're having these carry top laners come back in, which is so fun to watch, and especially going into Worlds with teams like SKT. What are they called? T1 now?
I think it's just T1.
I was like, I know it's not SKT, but so with T1, who has Khan, who's one of the most like the best carry top laners out in the world. Faker, who's great as these control mages. He can obviously play LeBlanc, Ryze, like Twisted Fate. He's got these in his pocket. The meta is going to be really cool for an international tournament, in my opinion, with a lot of these. And even some interesting strong picks like the Xin Zhao, who we haven't seen really too frequently on the world stage. So...
yeah, and that may be just like Harry Styles says, just a sign of the patch. But yeah, if it's still powerful by Riot's bidding, yeah, I imagine we'll still see it. But I think the most important thing is that these are picks that these teams aren't shying away from. These aren't picks that these teams are banning. They're confident in the Camille, they're confident in the Renekton, they're confident in the Gangplank. So yeah, I think to your point, it's going to make for a very spicy Worlds meta going into it, especially with so many touted like carry top laners, so many touted carry junglers currently right now. Super stoked on Worlds coming up, and in a way that I've been more in the past. Like, it feels like our North American teams have, I'll say, a decent grasp on the meta right now. Maybe things will change as the boot camp develops. Maybe, the Chinese team finds that, fucking Nami mid with an Ardent Sensor is just the meta, and here we go again. But no, I think it's gonna be really fun stuff. So yeah, Cloud9 wasn't able to find too much success in the series overall. 100 Thieves got it in 3 games, went 3-1. A lot of just good stuff coming out of 100 Thieves. Talk to me. Let's talk a little bit about the Team Liquid series. That was less of a struggle for 100 Thieves.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, they just kind of rolled through, and that I would say was really, really, and this is part of why I mentioned Closer earlier. Closer. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but
I'm pretty sure it's Closer, bro.
Closer.
He's the one you want in the game to bring it home. Close it down, son. Close it down.
But I mean, seriously, he just looked so good. Lee Sin twice, I believe Trundle in game 3 of that series for the jungle. I mean, they were just bringing out all the different picks. They had the Shen on their team in game one against Team Liquid for the top lane. Like they just looked really, really just untouchable kind of throughout that series. Team Liquid didn't seem to just be able to stand up to them, and I don't know what it was other than like Closer and 100 Thieves seem to be just like firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. It was not much of a contest, unfortunately. And on top of that, Team Liquid had some like weird champion picks that like they're just not panning out, man. They're just not panning out. Overall, the series looked pretty good. There wasn't anything like super erroneous. The one thing that I am talking about though is the fucking Ezreal. I'm pretty sure for Team Liquid, where it's like, I get it. Believe me, I get it.
Wait.
Who was red
Oh,
side?
yeah, you're right. You're right. I was looking
Yeah.
at that. Yeah, game one. The Ezreal is just not.
It doesn't do the damage if you're picking these comps and champions that you want to output the damage in the early game and you want to close that shit down by 26 minutes. Ezreal is not the one. I'm sure his numbers are skewed in a way where it's better than it was. The mobility is not worth it. Please, any pro players, if you're listening, the mobility is not worth it, son.
Well, and the other thing I would say is 100 Thieves really, I was really excited about their drafts in general.
Yep.
Being able to get Huhi on the Alistar uncontested 3 games. I mean, he looked so good on it. He was being that beefy, tanky cow that you need when someone's playing Alistar and doing just like hitting the headbutt pulverizes and being a tank and body blocking and just doing everything you need there. Like, they have found the way to do the tank top laner or the non-tank top laner, the carry top laner, and supplement that with the tank support and be able to do just fine in this meta, because you don't need an ultra tank in this meta. Like, you just need someone to be like some disengage and to throw a little wrench into things. I like that pick a lot. I'm surprised, honestly, that they got it in 3 games. Like, that kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, and especially even like, so the game, they last picked that Alistar in the 3rd game, and what's funny, 100 Thieves banned Thresh first on both of their blue side games, and then banned Thresh second in their third, or banned it first on red side, which it was just funny that the champion that would have done at least decent against it, they just got rid of it. They weren't trying to play it. They weren't going to let them play it. I'm not saying Thresh is like a direct counter. He just has options.
No, but I will say that Thresh was banned in 100% of the last like 7 series in this playoffs.
Yeah. What I was getting to was having a champion pick that has the engage opportunities and capabilities without having to worry about playing this hyper risky draft to just get a Thresh. The Huhi pick on the Alistar just seems super strong, and it allows them to keep that permaban Thresh permaban while playing around some of these other options like the Leona and the Bard and the Trundle that's in the meta currently.
Yeah, and it's I don't know what it is about North American players like switching to support and then being way better than they were, but man, Huhi, Core JJ, the 2 supports that were in the finals there, one used to be a mid laner, one used to be an AD carry, and they both are performing very well as supports right now, and they have those just that knowledge and that skill set around them that they've performed really well. But I just think it's kind of funny that the two of them second role in their career supports, and they're both in the finals and then now going to Worlds. So,
Well, I'll give you this hot take. It's a shame. It's a shame that Faker and Chovy press buttons so fast, because I think we would have had more supports as best player in the world if it wasn't for dudes like that.
yeah, I mean, like I think it's just exciting in general to see supports that are like kind of make like look really solid and strong again, because there's been kind of a lag in like really insane supports, and whether that's due to meta, like during the like enchanter support meta with the Jannas and Sorakas and things like that. Or, like, I feel like there haven't been supports that we really look at as potential best players in the world since like old school like Mad Life and things like that. Not that there aren't good supports out there at all, but just like for there to be someone that's like that good that they're like you get a play named after you as a support, like that doesn't happen very often.
Right. So. But yeah, to your original point, the Faker thing was fringe. But to your point, yeah, Core JJ and Huhi have role swapped, and it's almost as though they're different players completely in the new role. They've really just come alive in the support role. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see. Individuals being able to level up the team from the role swap, and then also like the individual just like finding like his right place. Like it's got to do a lot for the confidence of himself, the coaches, and the team, and thereby just boosting the morale of the whole thing. So I think it's a multifaceted good thing for players like Core JJ and Huhi to make these convincing and powerful role swaps.
Oh, absolutely. I think
man.
It's just something that I would love to see it more in League. Potentially is just like players being willing to, like we've seen it occasionally, but I like the idea of players being willing to do that to potentially have a better fit and to improve themselves as players and all, or take the knowledge that they learned from that other role and utilize it in a different position. I think we've seen that with Perks moving back and forth between AD carry and mid lane. We've seen it with different mid laners becoming junglers. We've seen a number of these things, but it's not super common. So I like the idea that some of these players have shown that you can be successful with the role swap. It's not just a way to extend your career and you're getting that bread. You could potentially still be a really solid asset to your teams and perform really well in a different role.
Yeah, and more, like you just said, and more than you were worth it before. So yeah, I think a lot of good things on the horizon for North America going into this Worlds. So we have 100 Thieves, number 1 seed, Team Liquid number 2 seed, Cloud9 number 3 seed going into Worlds. A couple of the other regions, into the play-in stage. Couple other regions have some more buys. So if that tells you something, I hope it does. In general, looking very much forward to this championship, man.
Yeah, and we've gotten a lot more of the teams solidified for Worlds. For China, we have the number 1 and 2 seeds set, but 3 and 4 are still not. So we have Edward Gaming as well as Fun Plus Phoenix. So Doinby is going to be back at Worlds, which is exciting for me with the Rise picks and the Twisted Fate picks. He's that great roaming mid laner who that is kind of how he controls the play of the game and the pace of the game. So I'm excited for that. We've got Damwon Gaming Kia, Gen G, and T1 coming from Korea. Mad Lions finishing first in Europe with Fnatic next to them, and then Rogue coming into the play-ins, which G2 for the first time in quite a while, missing out on Worlds, getting that vacation that was so dreamed about for many years.
I don't know if Reckless's Tear Ducts could handle another Worlds.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. They sell perks off to the highest bidder because they weren't willing to find a way to keep him around. And who's going to Worlds? Perks. Yep. Who's not going to Worlds? G2. So, I mean, definitely interesting. Rogue getting that third seed. Like you said, 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, Cloud9 to the play-in stage. PSG Talon, who we saw at MSI, has already qualified as the PCS champion into the main stage.
Yep.
So with Beyond Gaming qualifying as their second seed into the play-ins, just a lot of the teams being locked up, and I know we'll dive a little deeper into some of the champions. Teams who have qualified for the World Championship and all from the different regions going into Worlds. But it's pretty damn exciting. I'm pumped.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Looking forward to our second year of coverage. I'm excited to really nail this one. I remember we were new to podcasting and new to like competitive League of Legends for that like era. Really, I know both me and you had taken some time off that we weren't like focusing on it as heavily. So yeah, it'll be nice to come into this Worlds like just fully informed and just have all the storylines set up.
Yeah, I think like last year, one of the things was that we're gonna watch as much of it as we can because we don't know, and it was gonna be more like we're watching as like wide-eyed viewers with everyone else there. This year we'll be able to give, I think, a little better analysis, look a little more closely at certain games, certain matchups and all, and just kind of do it from a different perspective than last year. So
yeah, from a very armchair analyst perspective, which is where we love to be.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm here for anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess anything else from these series from NaLCS that you wanted to touch on before we move on to the next section?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I was in front of a closer on my knees for long enough. I'm all right.
Hey, I right there with you. He was just unreal. I was super impressed. But that does bring us along to a little bit of Magic the Gathering talk.
Yeah, so we had some fun games on Monday. It was Patreon night on the Mental Misplay Discord and Twitch stream. They are a good group of guys, Alan and Cyrus, that I've come to support and come to enjoy their content. They're just them as people. So they have a Magic night on their Discord where they invite all their patrons to come and play some Commander with them. I know I talked about it before. I just like to give them a proper shout out because they're a good bunch of guys. And so yeah, I was on their Twitch stream. We were playing with them. I got 3 games in on Burgie. I had 2 pretty good games. I was close to presenting a win, and then the third game, big fucking greed. I was a big greedy fat cat, and I kept a bad opening hand. I kept a 1-lander with like 1/2 of my combo, so I only needed to draw like one of the other pieces, and I was fine.
Didn't draw the other piece.
Well, not only did I not draw the other piece, I didn't draw any more lands to play. So I was stuck on 1 land. But I will say this, I was put out of my misery quickly. That game literally only lasted 3 turns. I'm pretty sure Alan wrapped it up on the 3rd turn. So I only didn't play 1 land, and then the game was over. So it wasn't a slow death, which I have to say I'm pleased for. Which
Yeah,
it
you
easily
gotta
could have been.
appreciate a quick death.
Yeah. So that was good, and it's just an all around fun night. Regardless of wins, losses, what deck I play, it's just a fun night with good people, like new friends overall, which is fun.
I've got a question about this though.
Yeah,
This
sure.
is the second time you've done this and been able to play on the like patron night and everything. Didn't you play a bunch of Burgie last time too?
Yeah, it's my favorite deck right now.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Is it just your favorite deck or is it your most competitive deck?
Both. Would like it's my favorite of the decks that I know could like hang at the table.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and it is fun in a way that it scratches a lot of my itches for Magic. So I think when I am gonna play in these games, I think that's why I go to that deck. It's got like the storm element. I've got some tutors. It ticks all the boxes. So I think that's why I like Burgie so much.
Gotcha. Okay, I was just curious because I know that's been a common deck you've played in competitive. So
Yeah. Oh, and I know even like when I put the deck together, like I was super stoked on it and was like, oh, like I just put this together, blah blah blah. Like I just love like storm and combo wins, and it's in mono red, which previous to Burgie, like I was not interested in.
oh yeah, I remember. Most mono
Yeah.
colors are just not very fun decks. I would say in general, there's some, but like
Yeah.
there, I'd say it's harder to find a fun like monocolored deck than it is to find a fun like multicolor deck.
Right.
From
Right.
how it
And
seems, yeah.
yeah, there are some decent mono colors, but just from like a deck building perspective, mono isn't that fun to build. I think they're perfectly fun to play, just not like to brew around.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so that was like an interesting element to it where it was like far out of my wheelhouse. And that far out of my wheelhouse, I learned that like, oh wow, this is really fun to play. So it's just like double dipping on like the dopamine and like, oh yeah, this is just good shit, right? So that's why I gravitate to the Burgie on the stream. But yeah, it was just super fun. We're kind of in the like honeymoon phase with that Patreon night where there's only a couple people. Well, they have a decent amount of patrons, which like shout out to them. I love that they're getting support, but not many of those patrons are like coming out to the Discord and like, oh yo, I'm playing. Like, oh, what do you got? Like, oh sweet. Like there weren't like 50 people like in the queue, right?
Yeah.
So we get to just like keep playing with them, and I think that's super fun because we're in that phase where like we are the prime supporters, right? And I love kind of getting in on the ground floor of like a growing channel. It makes me feel like a regular at a diner. Like they know me, I know that. Like there's a lot of just good stuff happening there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just good times. But yeah, the Burgie Storm is fun.
Well, I'm just excited about it also in a sense that like one of these nights that they have the patron night. I wish they had more of them, but I'm hoping honestly the next one that they have that I can take the time to like just hop on the Twitch like stream and just watch along.
Yeah, dude, that'd be dope.
I think it would be cool to check out, see you playing some games up there. With some of these guys, it's a way that you can do it without. It's much easier that way than it would be for you guys to all film for the your Commander 9 League and everything. Like
yeah, especially because the people doing the Discord, like that's what they're signing up for. That's what they really like. But especially like Ian and Jason, like they hated the webcam shit. So yes, you're like doing a thing that you like doing, but in a way that you hate. Like that's a different type of agitation. So yeah, to your point about the spell table, like playing online, yeah, it is fun to find a community that's like up for that and is willing to do that because it takes a lot of the stress out of it. You can just just rock up to my desk with my commander deck, and there's a new pod of friends that are like waiting to play. I think that's pretty dope.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it. I know for a bit you were like pretty bummed that you were like, Commander 9 League, like we can't get games into
Dude,
like a while ago, and then you were like, I don't know who to play with. I'm trying to get like put some feelers out, but that you found like a group that you've at least got. What is it, once a month that they do the patron games?
Yeah, which, I mean, hell, that was more than we were playing with Commander 9, so it's more than it was.
That's not bad at all either. Like, once a month, like I said, I wish they did it more. It'd be easier to tune in depending on what I've got going on, but...
well, to be honest, like if I'll let you know, and we'll put out some tweets about the Patreon night for Mental Misplay. I'll let you know when it's going down. I'll let everybody know when it's going down.
I'm happy to support a server that is like giving back to us in a way with like getting you playing games, giving us some content to talk about and things like that. Like,
yeah, dude. Talk about it. That's an amazing point.
That's a cool thing. Like and it's one of those things that I don't know how to do extremely well, which is like joining up with other smaller like or growing kind of creators and things like that. My cousin is a Twitch streamer, and that's how she built a decent following with her stream. Like anytime she streams, she's got probably 20 to 30 people watching, which is like good for it's awesome for a small Twitch streamer like who she got a normal job, she does it on the side, but she streams consistently, gets decent viewership, but it's because she went to other small communities and like watched and participated and was like joined in, so then those people reciprocate. So like we're talking about you having these patron nights with the Mental Misplay server and everything, and like we get to talk about that, and you get to participate in that and build their community and all as well. It's kind of a cool little symbiotic relationship there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm not even sure I was aware of that little element. But yeah, that's a beautiful point to make. Yeah. People helping people via word of mouth. That's man, that's a great thing to be behind.
Well, I mean, our most interacted with tweet from the Tall and Short of It Twitter was the tweet that you put out about playing in the Mental Misplay like patron games and everything that they had. You got some like different interactions, a response tweet and everything from some guys, some likes, some whatever. It was really cool seeing that and seeing that like little interaction. I'd love to have more of that just in general. But that was cool, just like standalone for you to get to have that with some of those guys that you played with or like were there for the games.
Yeah, just all around good stuff. I could not say one bad thing about it if you had a gun to my head. So yeah, great time. Shout out Alan. Shout out Cyrus, a Mental Misplay. Shout out Elder Drunken Highlander, my friend Josh. He's got a Twitch channel, a YouTube channel about Commander. Mab the Queen. I know she's on Twitter with all her hot takes about different Commander things. So go check out all of them. Just good times, good people, good Commander. So thanks for letting me gush a little bit because it was super fun. Now let's get into our flavor of the week here to close out, because we had an interesting conversation before we turned the camera on that I'd love to get back to. We were talking about horror and different movies that we enjoy. What type of fears tickle your fancy there, Aaron?
Well, I'll kind of start it out with just like kind of delving into the start of the flavor in the week. So
yeah.
I was talking about how Colleen and I yesterday. Oh,
what happened?
Camera just lost its grip there. I could not tell you. That was weird. I think that's about where it was. Anywho, Cabin in the Woods was something Colleen and I watched last night. She had never seen it before, and I enjoy like unique kind of horror movies. I'm not very much for, and which beginning of September, it felt like fall a little bit. I'm like, time to start. I normally don't get into the Halloween and fall stuff until it's too late, whether that's like going to haunted attractions or watching scary movies or anything. I like wait till
Gotcha.
it's like right up before the holiday and I'm like, oh, I gotta like binge a few things and like watch some stuff, and then I'm like, okay, it's on to the like, I don't know. I feel like I kind of don't participate as much as I would like to in those like fall fun
Okay.
things.
Gotcha.
So I was like, I'm gonna start early. Cabin in the Woods, really funny movie. But I was talking to Justin before the episode started about like some other and interesting movies. We were talking about Grave Encounters, which is an interesting horror movie, a found footage kind of horror movie, which is a different like segment of that horror genre. Which
And
led
I
us
had never
into
heard that term before.
yeah, which kind of led us into like talking about all the different types and what actually makes a horror movie scary to people. Because for me, I don't think that jump scare horror movies are good. Whether I think they're scary or not, I think that a jump scare is cheap and it's just more surprising you than it's actually scaring you. So I'm not a huge fan of those. But what
Pause on
does
that. Pause on that
yes.
point. So the jump scare, you described it as cheap. So from like a stand-up comics perspective, that's like the hacky, like kind of like fart jokes and like zinger, like knee slapper type stuff where it's like, yeah, like it'll get a laugh pretty easily, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of generic. It's like a little
Okay,
bit
okay.
more like it's easier to do, honestly, because all it takes is like, oh, I've got a spooky setting, and then something's gonna
Right.
pop out at you when you least it, or well, maybe least expected, or just like it's gonna pop out at some time. You know it's gonna happen, but
Yeah, okay.
it's just like
Okay. I
so
love that
like
word. You said cheap.
yeah,
Continue.
because it's one of those things that's like you know it's going to happen, so you're already looking at it and you're like, oh, I know what's scary about this movie. What's scary about this movie isn't as much the like the score of it or the setting or the filming and production. It's just like a Jack in the Box popping up at you, like going ah, and you're like, okay. So that is not something that I think is like a quality way. I like seeing films that build up to some sort of whether it's an M. Night Shyamalan twist that you're not really expecting, or it's just building up a really intense, scary horror atmosphere that you're sitting there on pins and needles, like waiting to see what happens to the characters. And so, talking about Grave Encounters, like that is, even though it has some comedic elements based on the way it's filmed and kind of the plot of the movie, it definitely is like it builds a very like scary kind of feel and environment and vibe like as you're watching it. And so like for me, horror movies that specifically scare me are ones that are more realistic because they have that building of like the scene and like they kind of like suck you in. You're like, oh, like this scene, like in certain instances, I will not say Grave Encounters instance, there are like scarier horror movies that are like real enough that it's like, oh, there, that's terrifying because there could be something out there potentially like this, or at least
Yeah.
like it's real enough that maybe that's not quite the case, but you're like, it seems realistic enough that it like draws you in for whatever that scare is.
Right.
And so your take, like you can definitely get into it more, was like each like music, every person has different things that they're looking for in music. Some people are looking for, like, I'd say, like, more like us, some really solid production, thematic, like, carrying throughout albums, complete albums, lyricism, where some people might just be going for a fucking fun beat that just, like, gets them jived up, gets them moving, and, like, that's what they're looking for.
And qualitatively, one is not better than the other.
Right. And so in
Yeah.
horror movies, like, some people might love movies with jump scares because it, like, gets
Right.
that adrenaline flowing. It's like pumps
Right.
them up, like, gets them, like, on the edge of their seat. Whereas I look at it, like I said, is it's, like, cheap because you don't have to, like, put all the effort into all the other dynamics to create a scary atmosphere.
Right. Or like, now I'll reserve my thoughts about the film, but there's, like films like Get Out. Like that's considered a horror movie. There's not necessarily traditional horror elements in that movie. I would say it's more of like a psychological, maybe even a social horror movie.
Yeah.
Where the underpinning of it is like, look at this really scary scenario that we as a community are responsible for. Like, there was no blood, no like nefarious like murder or anything, but it was like that racism was pretty fucking terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then you look at and then this one just popped into my head, like Jaws. Is that a horror movie? Would anybody call that? Would anybody find that in the horror genre? Maybe back in the day, but somebody who has like a deep fear or has a fear of deep water, like thalassophobia it's called, like that is a horror movie to me. Fucking
Well,
Jaws, brother.
And like you mentioned before when we were talking earlier, the clowns. I hate clowns. Clowns freak me the fuck out. Like, they are. I find it so uncomfortable to see someone dressed up with all this makeup so you can't see who they really are. Just like being this goofy, like weird, like character to try and entertain. Like, that is like not. And I don't know if it's just the amount of clown horror shit I've seen over the years, and like in CSI and SVU and like all these like TV shows and movies and everything. I've never really liked clowns, but like the idea of someone putting on all this makeup so you don't know who they really are and then going around children's birthday parties to like make balloon animals just is fucking weird to me. It's like makes me uncomfortable. So clowns just creep me out. So I won't watch it because I have no, like, I am not going to be scared in an enjoyable way. I'm just going to be like very uncomfortable. Like,
Okay.
There's something like kind of what you were alluding to. There's something enjoyable kind of about being scared, about being like have something that is like puts you on edge and you're like it kind of tests those limits. It's like Bert Kreischer's his The Machine comedy special on Netflix. He talks about how he told Rachel Ray that he didn't want to go skydiving, and she goes out on stage and is like, behind stage, Bert told me he would never go skydiving. So let's see if he'll do it. And like in front of all these like middle-aged women, like convinces him to go skydiving, and he ends up like doing it. And everything with Rachel Ray, like it was an actual thing that happened because he had a show called, I think it was Bert the Conqueror, where he did all these like extreme things.
Okay.
So for me, it's like I like to face certain fears that I have. I've considered going skydiving when my biggest fear is falling from heights. Like, I'm not scared of heights. I can fly. I can ride roller coasters. None of that scares me in the slightest. I feel comfortable. I feel fine. No worries. The idea of dropping from like some extended height, cliff jumping, into water, like skydiving, bungee jumping, all of those things freak me the fuck out. So I've considered skydiving because I'm like, I think it's genuinely a good thing to face your fears in a safe situation and all. And I think horror movies can be kind of a way to do that in a sense. You can face things that you're certain kind of afraid of and get that like just enough scare that it like tickles that little thing and like is entertaining, but it's not like traumatizing you to a point. I'm sure some horror movies could though.
Or even something that wouldn't even be classified as horror could have scary enough elements that it would put somebody off. Just in my life, I remember being like viscerally disturbed by Jurassic Park 2 and 3. I'd watched 1 and was perfectly fine. But there was something about 2 and 3 that, as like a young kid, like seemed very different to me. And like that would be just like an action adventure film, right?
Yeah.
That was a horror movie in my mind.
Well,
so
in my mind,
it's weird.
I mean, Alice in Wonderland, the Disney cartoon movie, and Dumbo the elephant freaked me out. I don't know what it is, but they were mad trippy, and child me could not handle it. Like they made me uncomfortable. In Alice in Wonderland, the little two-headed like twin guy that was there, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum or whatever they called him. I think that's what it was. Like
that's what it is.
Freaked me out. The Cheshire Cat. Freaky, weird. It was like too trippy for me. And
interesting.
Like same thing with Dumbo, like the scene with all the like where he's basically hallucinating because I think he got drunk. Like with all the purple elephants like flapping around and everything. Too much, too trippy, freaked me out. I will not watch those movies, but they're not horror movies by any means. I don't know what I keep doing to this camera.
You're probably like hitting your desk with your knees because it happened both times when you leaned back.
Yeah, I'm like hitting something, but
interesting. So yeah, what we're finding is there are like horror is such a mutable thing in a specific sense. Like there's generally like you would just say like, oh, it's a scary movie, or like, oh, it's a horror movie. But I feel like there is such individual differences in what like gets under our skin that you more often than not are presented with movies that just like make you giggle and laugh because like you don't respect the mechanism of fear that the director's trying to use. Like how many people nowadays like are still scared of the slow moving guy with a chainsaw? Like nobody.
Like, right.
It's not scary anymore. So there's an element of like of finding the thing that's horrifying that might be not within the horror genre yet. And this was an example I used with Aaron earlier, is like the first season of American Horror Story, where it's like that perverse, weird, like why am I attracted to these like disturbing people, right? It has that sexual tension, but that's like creepy and scary to some people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a pick your poison type genre. It's weird.
Well, and I think that there are also and this is just like my mind like kind of just not running wild with me, but I think it'll be interesting to see the progression of horror movies over our lifetimes too, because we've gone from these horror movies that are like, yeah, dude with a chainsaw walking really slowly, and no matter where the main characters run and hide, like he finds them, and it's like that almost like dream like horror where you're in your dream and no matter where you run, like you can't run fast enough. You feel like you're stuck in molasses, like you can't get away.
Right.
And so you have that. And then as it's progressed, you've gone into like as cinematics have gotten better, like and CGI and whatnot, you get ghosts and you get like all these other horror, like kind of realistic horror movies that have more supernatural aspects to them because we have the ability to create that in film. And then so like in the future, like what's it going to be? Is it going to transition to more like digital horror? Like there is some sort of like internet stalker who is finding their way to you that's like utilizing your like I don't know what that could be,
Right.
but like the progression also goes with the ability for films, like the time period and what is like culturally fitting for those time periods, but also with the technology to create some of these special effects or different things in the film itself.
Wow, that's a great point. So horror could be beholden to the time and the technology that the idea exists in.
Yeah, so like the original It movie, like yeah, maybe there was some dude dressed as a clown that was like murdering kids, and someone was like, "Yo, like I got an idea, like this clown that's popping out of drains, like where you least expect it, luring children in, and like all this stuff." And then like now you've got like serial killer kind of stuff that people are like creeping through and like do like it changes based on kind of what is I guess more prevalent in society. Like you said, Get Out is a horror movie, but it is a very cultural horror movie that is based around like not just the racism that persisted through America's history, but also the fact that it's still prevalent and like actually active in present day in some areas. There's still places in the US that they call sundown towns where like if you are a person of color, like you do not want to be around those places after dark because they've got some really messed up racist people living in that area. Like that's freaky in a sense that like you wouldn't necessarily have made Get Out back in like the 1970s after like things were starting to get more desegregated.
Right, because it wouldn't even that wouldn't even make sense.
Yeah, like desegregation happened like in the early 60s.
Well, so, and like yeah, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it's just wild to think about, and I thought that's why I wanted to save it a little more for the podcast.
Well, yeah, there was so much to go into. You're right.
Discussion, but there was a lot that I felt like we could like extrapolate on, kind of talking about it and all.
Yeah, because I never gave that much thought to horror. Like it was just something in my mind that was like. It was just reserved for like the slasher films and like Saw and stuff like that. Like I always associated horror with just like blood and gore. Where
well, and that's even another kind. Like most horror movies, I'd say don't have blood and gore, but then you have ones like that are just like crazy, like with the blood and gore too.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild the variation that the directors go for, and this was like kind of the point that I maybe underpin some of my beliefs about horror is like, what if making a general horror movie is impossible nowadays because not everybody is afraid of the same thing? Maybe what you're trying to do is make a horror movie for a specific subset of people that are afraid of that thing, but willing to get close enough.
Kind of like the largest niche audience that you can find, because like you want the most like people watching it, but like the best way to potentially do that maybe is by finding some weird niche that's like a lot of people are kind of freaked out by this, and this is like, I think that's why Paranormal Activity did so well back in the like 2000s and early 2010s or whenever it came out. It was like the first time that CGI and those things were good enough to kind of give these like ghost scares and everything. So it was like a newer aspect of that genre to be able to do that everyone was like, oh, like you gotta see these movies because like they're like
the ghost seems so real, or they had the capability to seem so real,
so much better than previous horror movies, right? That kind of stuff.
Wow. It makes me think of like Hostel, where it's like the fear of traveling, right? And then it's like you get like the sexual hangups too, because I know there was like some nudity and like, you know, some of the guests like were kind of into each other, and then I remember the torturers like played into that a little bit. So you get like travel fear, like sexual perversion, and then it was just like the raw like kind of like Saw grindhousey, like where people were just like getting cut up. You had like the medical robes and like, you know, the like all that kind of stuff. Like it, like those are like three really strong things that they were like, all right, we got this, and this in the gumbo, stir it all up, and you have this.
Yeah, you mix those things together, and like also something like The Hitchhiker. Have you ever seen The Hitchhiker?
Oh yeah.
That's another one that just popped into my mind as like like I'm sure there were plenty of people who had like at the time period when you could just like, hey, I need to get somewhere and there's not Uber, there's not good public transportation, planes are expensive. Like I'm gonna just see if I can get to the next place by like walking and being like, hey, who will pick me up and drop me off like in the nearest location. Hitchhiker, it's a guy who picks people up on the side of the road and fucking murders them. Like that's
like if that came out today, people would be like, what's a hitchhiker?
Yeah, people would be like, just fucking get an Uber, man.
Right, yeah, like what a weird thing. And then that's when you get the people that laugh at comedy movies or laugh at horror movies because they're like, oh, that's not like scary, that's just dumb.
Me and my old roommate Kyle turned off the Hitchhiker partway through because he was like, he goes, this sucks, this is a terrible movie, I don't see what's scary about this at all. And he was like, we need to find something different to watch. I was like, all right. It's one of those, it's so interesting to look at.
And I always really underrated horror, but now that we're talking about this so much, I'm like, oh my god, like it's actually like a super difficult genre to work in.
Yeah, it's pretty damn cool, honestly. Like
interesting. Okay,
kind of wild.
Yeah, very cool, man. Okay, so this all started because your flavor of the week, flavor of the month, you're getting into the Halloween spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
So I've got going on, I guess, with my flavor of the week for my food. Colleen and I, this past week, we went out to a restaurant called Cantina, and we had some, I think they're, what do they call it? Birria tacos. It's like the taco where they dip the tortilla in like this sauce blend of spices and chilies and like everything. I've got to look up exactly.
They dip it in a sauce and then fry it.
It's like BIRRIA is how it's spelled. And so the shells, so you basically create this like liquid sauce, and it's chilies and it like all these like different sides, kind of almost like a salsa but like a thinner consistency. And like they will like basically dunk the tortilla in it, throw it on the grill to like grill the like sauce into the tortilla while they're like heating it up. And then you put the like meat and like all the toppings inside, and you give the person who's eating it a bowl of the sauce that you like dunk the tortilla in. So you like dunk the taco in the sauce with all the meat and everything to get it nice and juicy. And kind of like
what?
Yeah, it is so good. I had seen it on on
Damn.
TikTok a while ago, and we went out to this little Mexican place and we saw it on the menu. We're like,
Ugh.
yo, gotta try that. So,
Jesus, bro. You just
dude,
like took me somewhere, man. Holy
it
shit.
was so good. I liked it a lot. And
Damn.
it seems like they're primarily like beef short rib, like kind of as the meat. So
Of course.
it's like, dude, it was good.
Damn.
So that was my food, music, Donda.
Yeah.
Donda, 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 Donda. I mean,
So are you sticking with your initial impression? Like me and you listening to through it, me and you were very impressed and like what we heard. Did that stick? What do you think?
I enjoy it a lot, and I'm listening to it. There are definitely songs that I enjoy listening to more than others. That
Yeah,
just
of
like
course.
and like there's some that I'm like, I don't feel like I really need to listen to this song many more times. And there's ones that I'm like, oh, like I like listening to this, like Off the Grid, Jail, like a number of those different songs that like. Unfortunately, I think if you listen to the album straight through as a whole, it is a really, really good album. But there are certain songs that if you listen to them in like as a standalone song, there is too much dead time on them where it's just beats, or there's not enough like substance, where in the album as a piece, those songs, like you roll from the previous song into like this transition of just like instrumental and everything, or a snippet of a
Like Kanye's mom or the gentleman that was
Yeah.
talking about his father.
Yeah, people like giving speeches, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have those things that like break it up that are great in the album as a whole, but individually on their own, those songs are lacking because they don't have the replayability due to those like almost like less exciting pieces of it as a standalone song.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like it's hard to explain, but like if you give just the substance of the song without those side pieces, whether it's the playing out of the beat at the end or that whatever intro it is, it loses something about the song, but it gives it more replayability because you're right into the bars, into the beats, into those things.
Right.
As
For the
a
features
whole,
and all that. Yeah.
exactly, but as a whole of an album, if you're looking at it in that context, I really, really do enjoy it, and I think it all flows very well, and there are a lot of really cool aspects of it throughout.
I would mostly agree. I think there are some big standouts. I really like that he leaned into the like the choir elements. I love that he memorialized his mother with an album that's like not just a memorial for his mom. I think it's like a really special thing that he was able to do. Once again, the features that were on the album, he used them like instruments.
And he had so many features.
So
which was
many.
really, really cool.
And it didn't feel overloaded or like unnecessary or weird or whatever. Like they all had strength in their own merit. I love the Pop Smoke song on there. That was literally just Pop Smoke. Like literally it didn't. I don't think anyway there was like anything else about that was any other artist.
Yeah, television. Yeah.
Yeah. So an album about the passing of somebody that he loved. It really warms my heart that Kanye gave another individual that hip hop came to love, who also passed away. I think it's dope that Kanye gave him his own little slot right there on the album, just to say like, hey man, like we miss you. Like I think that says a lot, artist to artist.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one thing that was actually seemed to be disliked by a lot of people from what I saw online compared to my feelings on it was the religious aspect of it. So you have the Sunday service choir, you
Oh, you had to
have
know.
well, and you have like he censored like a lot
Hmm.
of the
All of them, in
yeah,
fact.
all of the features and everything. There are very few like swear words. Jesus Christ, in no joke about the Kanye album. Jesus Christ, I keep bumping my camera. Whatever. I'll I'm gonna leave it. Anywho, you really get a perspective on I think where Kanye is in his life and how he is trying to carry himself and everything
Hmm.
now. And so I think that all the hate about, oh, they censored this guy's lines and they censored that guy's lines and this is ridiculous. Are they going to come out with an explicit version? Like maybe they'll come out with an explicit version. Oh no, they're probably not, because Kanye's the one released on Kanye's website is like has everything censored too.
Right.
I'm like, guys, like, look at where Kanye. I think that's something that you and I like really agree upon, and it's looking at the artists that we enjoy when they make albums and kind of their growth as artists, but you can see how different they are as people too. Like Mac
Hmm.
Miller, you could see the change in his outlook on life throughout his albums and everything,
Hmm.
along with how like just he was in general. And I think Kanye is very similar in that aspect, that you're like, Kanye was like, this is who he is. He is a religious person, and that's really at this stage in his life, and that's coming out in this as well. And that makes the album unique to him
Hmm.
as well. It's not just
Hmm.
another generic rap album. It is also unique to Kanye. And
Hmm.
that's fucking cool. Like that's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, and just to be like a Kanye stan, if like, and yeah, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but just in terms of consistency, like if any of those people that talked about the like gospel aspects of this album, if any of those individuals enjoyed the life of Pablo and had only good things to say about the life of Pablo, I might ask those individuals to like, hey, like check yourself, because I'm pretty sure they're the exact same thing. There's a world where Kanye West has been using his gospel and church influence in his music from the very start. Like, do you all forget who wrote Jesus Walks? That was on his debut fucking album. Jesus Walks was on Kanye's debut album. So anybody that's saying like, "Oh, fuck this God shit, fuck this religion shit," like, man, that has been a part of Kanye's like, that has been a staple in Kanye music from the very beginning. In fact, that's one of the things that I love so much about Kanye West is his connection to the gospel and how he has able to use it similarly to other artists like Kendrick Lamar kind of uses jazz in that way. But think of artists like Joey Badass or Stormzy or other individuals who are using gospel sounds to enhance their rap music. I think it's a tired take. I think it's like distasteful. It shows your clear lack of dis support for the artists that you claim to enjoy.
Well, I mean,
There,
fuck, like the dude had an entire album called Yeezus and he continues to in his future albums refer to himself in that way that is like putting him as someone that he sees as being close to God, and whether that means close as in his relationship like you would see now with like Jesus is King and like Donda
Yeah,
and
that was a full
everything.
gospel album that he did.
Yeah, or whether you're looking at that as like he sees himself on kind of an elevated plane, like he sees himself as being close to those at like those beliefs in a
Or those
number of
ideals, yeah.
ideals in a number of different ways throughout his career, and that is like something that I was very surprised when I saw all those things on Twitter about like when's the explicit version coming out? This is bullshit. They censor all
Yeah.
this stuff. I'm
Like, how important is it to hear shit 3 times?
well,
Like,
and how are you overlooking like?
everything else, yeah.
I mean, that is such a like telling and interesting part of the album as a whole. The fact that he doesn't allow cursing and swearing on it, really.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. It's not what you do, it's what you omit, too, that can be just as powerful.
oh, absolutely. It's insanely powerful. So
Yeah.
I really did enjoy the album a lot. I think that, like I said, I think it's going to be similar to almost to Pimp a Butterfly with me from Kendrick, that it's like I may not go and listen to a lot of the songs back on it very frequently, but I definitely will re-listen to the entire album at points when I have the time to go back through and like really really listen and genuinely enjoy that piece as a whole. That is an artistic piece to me, and I think it's really cool. There are definitely some songs that I'll see on like some of my other playlists that I have that genuine like just normal replayability of a song, but I enjoyed the album a lot. I'm interested to see some more takes now that we're a little far out from the initial release and hype of it, to see what people say. I haven't seen Melonhead's deal on it yet, or if he's put anything out.
From what I understand, his initial takes were solid. Couple of misses, like you were talking about. Like, he was, I think he has a tendency to judge things track by track a little heavily. Like, I think he weighs the usefulness of a song more on its single power than on its place in the album. I'm not saying unrightfully so. I honestly think a lot of his takes on music are like really objective. For this album in particular, it sounds like he's weighing the single power a little too highly. But yeah, to your point, I think it will age incredibly well. I know I'm definitely going to look back fondly on it. I think there are already some like tracks in my mind that are just like Kanye staples now. But yeah, to your point, I'm pretty sure Kanye spells his name with a capital K.
Yeah, I'm excited to continue listening, see how it changes for me, and like
Yeah,
what
man, for
I
sure.
think as I listen more and get. It's something with rap is that a lot of times I like find things like way after the fact that I didn't notice before. I think that's a really cool aspect. I feel like that this is going to be one of those albums where I always feel like I'm gleaning a little bit more about the artist and about the album as I re-listen to it over time,
Yeah.
and have some separation of like what I thought when I first listened to compared to later on. So
Yeah. That's a good observation. But
yeah,
definitely a good release. Very pleased with it. It was worth the wait. Yeah, that's a great flavor of the week, man. I had a feeling that was going to be yours.
yeah, and I mean it was good conversation to have too, because I really wanted to talk about the album and it just fits pretty perfectly for me this past week there. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Good shit, man.
yeah,
So I will keep my flavor of the week short here. So the big thing I really want to touch on is just the movie that I saw, Visual Medium, just because we're pretty general with it. It was a movie. It's the one with Saul. Saul Goodman. What the fuck is his name? Bob Odenkirk. New release. I believe it was on Netflix called Nobody.
Okay.
I really don't want to say too much about it, but it was a cracker. It was really entertaining. It has like yeah, it's got just really good flair. Doesn't take itself too seriously, and if there's one thing I love in movies more than anything, it's understanding where you're gonna have a boring part within the story and make it fucking stylish. And the opening sequence to the film is super fucking stylish in a way that, like, you know, it keeps you hooked for the rest of the thing. So Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, I hope you give it a watch because it's fucking sick.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking. I was just like Googling it because I hadn't heard of it.
Okay.
And it's something that I think might be interesting to check out. And where did you watch it on?
It was either Netflix or Hulu.
Okay, cool. So I can watch it on either. But yeah, I'm always looking out for something new like that. So that's a cool thing that I'm definitely up to check out and get a good idea.
And Mr. Odenkirk knocked it out of the park. Great performance from him. Just real stylish movie, really entertaining. So that's my visual medium for the week. Obviously, music. I was just going to talk about Donda. Obviously, that's heavy on the brain. And my food, I was going to talk about the 2 meals that I had at the concert. The one was from a burrito food truck. It was terrible. And then the other... And then the other, I just got like chicken tenders and fries, and that was like the best meal that I had. So, and this is like my 3rd or 4th experience with food trucks, and they've all been exactly the same. Where I'm off on the hype.
It's way more expensive than it should be, and it like the food.
And it was all cooked 3 days ago. Like literally none of it was fresh. It all tasted like it was powdered. I was not having it. Yeah. So yeah, for them to desecrate a food that I love, burritos, it was really heartbreaking. So yeah, that was a tough one. But that's my flavor of the week, my friend. This has been a great week. We had a lot of good stuff happening. We have a lot of good stuff to look forward to. We got Worlds coming up. We have the Zandvoort Grand Prix here for Formula One. Check out all of our coverage for that coming up next Wednesday on the Tall and Short of It podcast. We've got a new podcast coming your way. I'm going to record tomorrow. We got Push and Pull, a medical massage podcast. So check that out if you're into what we do here out on the massage table. Aaron, give me your thoughts. Tell them where to find us. Take us out of here, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. So you can find us anywhere you guys find podcasts. We're on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, I believe Apple Podcast. Like, we're just look for podcasts, you'll find us. We're also on YouTube. Of course, you can see us with the full video, Tall and Short of It on YouTube. And then on Twitter, of course, we're at Tall and Short of 1, the number 1. Interact with us. I talked about it earlier on the podcast with Justin getting to interact with some of those guys from the Mental Misplay podcast and everything from that Discord server and all. Sorry, not podcast or just Discord?
They don't have a podcast.
Okay, Discord server. So,
yeah, they just make YouTube Commander gameplay.
Yeah, so YouTube Commander gameplay with Mental Misplay, Justin being on there. So you can interact with us on Twitter, of course, as well, just like some of the guys did from that. But yeah, keep an eye out. We've got the Race Companion if you want more in-depth about this past week's 2-lap race. And of course, going forward for more Race Companions in the future. But yeah, that's about all I got.
Yeah, just want to say thank you for spending your time with us here. I know we're a day late, but thanks for hanging out. This has been another Tall and Short of It podcast. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. Peace.
Later, guys.